Time for the Tesla and the Palantir weekly update. So, taking a look at Tesla first, as usual, we can see that we were paying attention to that 378 to the 390 zone. And what did Tesla just do? Well, it broke below the 378 for the first time. So, that is kind of a bearish development for the short term. That still does not change the high time frame trajectory of going higher to the 400s, 500s, and beyond in the future. But in the short term, it does mean that maybe it's going to put some pressure on price. Does that mean it needs to come back down to the 786? I mean, it depends on the market conditions, but yeah, if markets sell off, I think that is maybe like a max pain scenario there for 347.58, right? And that would be a perfect back test of that from the all-time high to the low back in January of 2023. That'd be a perfect back test of that 786. And like I always say, if price does stay above the 786 for a long period of time, then it's almost guaranteed, not 100%, right? But almost guaranteed to go back towards all-time highs and beyond and get to these fib extensions above. So I am going to be focused to see if there is some kind of continuation to the downside towards that number, but there is some confluence that maybe could stop before that, right? And I'm going to pull up the Ichimoku first, just to tell you or to show you what's really going on with this. And what we can see here with the Ichimoku is that the baseline down there is at 341.60. So if it got really bad, maybe it could wick through both of those and go continue and build a base and then go higher, right? So perhaps that 347.58 down to the 341 could be the max pain scenario if you are worried about things going lower. But let me just pull up a different chart for you, the linear scale GAN, just so you can see that there is a potential for price to not really go down that far next week and maybe just stay in the 350s. So let me show you that. So here is the linear scale GAN that I've shown you many times, and I think about a month ago I did show you that the possibility of going back down to this 358 was possible, right? And that's the orange level of the GAN. So that is basically right around that 358 level, and price is almost there, and it almost got there today. So that means that price could get there where it was a previous resistance right here, and it's a breakout, got rejected by the 45-degree angle, and maybe flip it to support. Right, so perhaps that could be some kind of target, and it doesn't need to even go all the way down to those 340s that I mentioned before. So this is some optimism that maybe price can recover soon, maybe just early Monday or Tuesday or whatever. It could just wick through that level and then start to build a base and go higher. So I am going to be watching that 358 first. If that continues to hold, then don't really need to worry about the 340s below. But again, if this does break, get that liquidity underneath, then it might get to those 340s that I mentioned and then come higher and higher and higher. Again, just like this blue angle right here, right? When you saw this blue angle break out back in July, it did back test it, but it got the liquidity underneath quite a bit into the low 200s before it really reclaimed that blue angle. So perhaps this could be the similar situation where it gets all the liquidity underneath in the 340s or so before really trying to go higher. So this is a big point of interest for Tesla for the 358 level to see if it can hold. And lastly, what I want to show you is actually what's happening on the daily chart here. When I put on the daily Ichimoku, what do we see there? That the bottom of the cloud is actually right here next week, and that's at 350.48, right? So that is kind of more confluence that maybe if it does wick through, that perhaps it could stop around that 350 zone and maybe not even get to those 340s that I mentioned before. So this is looking like a potential, like getting closer and closer to the bottom here. So the people that fear the most, they do usually fear when it's closer to high time frame support zones. And that's exactly where Tesla is really at right now. So it's really close. When you see 360 and maybe even like 350s, the difference there is really minimal, right? So if you're panicking around this zone here, I think it's the incorrect thing to do, because this is something that still has massive potential, massive growth in the future, and it's all about accumulation, right? I've been accumulating TSLL all the way down, right? And I did actually buy some more today. So this actually does not concern me at all. If it goes lower, then I'm going to buy a lot more, right? This is just what I do. And I did the same thing when Tesla was all the way down here, right? It was in the 200s, then it went down to the 190s. I was buying all of this, right? And even I started buying in like the 140s, 149. then the 160s, 170s. I bought all of this. And in hindsight, it doesn't even matter at all, right? Because it's a massive breakout and it's a back test happening right now. So this is accumulation zone right now. This is no need to panic. This is an opportunity. It's a gift for the future. Everybody waits for a pullback, but very few people take advantage of it because they usually panic. So just let's focus on that 358 for next week. See if that can hold. Maybe even the 350, this daily Ichimoku cloud, to see if this zone can hold throughout the week. And if so, we don't even have to worry about the 340s, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And just remember that Tesla chart is still very bullish on the high time frame. And next here is Palantir. So Palantir, I'm going to show you the linear scale linear scale fib first, simply because from the all-time high to the all-time low, that price finally actually closed above the 2.618, the 108.23 fib extension. So this was a very good achievement for Palantir. It just sliced right through this 2.272 fib, and it closed above both. So where is support? Well, first support we can look to is the 108.23, and if that does not hold next week, then we got to look to the 94.71. So I think these are important levels to pay attention to, but after a monster move, coming back down to the 94 would not be a big deal at all. But the fact is, today did hit resistance, and people need to understand that. So how to understand that is we're going to go to the log scale GAN here, and I'm going to pull this up right here. And there we go, right? It broke out of this blue angle, broke above the arc, and do you see what it hit today? Do you see visually what it hit? And if you're looking at this angle right here, that is correct. It hit resistance today, and it closed below. Now, we go down this angle, and you can clearly see it was a resistance before, back in November 2023, September of 2023, August of 2023. Right, so you can see the importance of this angle, and it's probably still going to be resistance next week too. But that means the resistance next week at the top of that angle is around 115.55, maybe, right up there. So it could do that again, right? It could keep challenging resistance, but I would not be a buyer of that zone because I don't really chase, right? And if price were to go back down to that 94, then you could even wick through that 94, that linear scale fib level, and even get to retest the top of this arc here, which is kind of in the high 80s, right? So this could be volatile. You could see a back test sometime in the future of the 80s here, even for Palantir before going higher. So am I going to be taking profits personally? No, I'm not, because I have the bigger target in the future of just getting up to maybe the 150s, the 160s, 170s, whatever. In the higher zones, right? I think the momentum is still in the bull's favor. So even if it does pull back, it doesn't really mean anything to me because I can handle that volatility. But I just want to prepare you guys that this is a resistance angle here, and price could easily pull back to the 90s or even 80s before really resuming its uptrend once again. So extremely bullish chart. It was a monster 34% week for Palantir, but I am cautious here and going into the weeks to come because I don't really think it's going to break this angle so easily, because you can see how massive of a resistance it was back in November of 2023 and all these months back in 2023. So just be cautious up here, but the long-term trend, I still think 130s, 150s, maybe even 180s, maybe even 200 is possible for Palantir. So we're just going to keep our eye on resistance next week around the 115.50s. If that can't break, then watch out below, because it could retest below 100 one more time.